Yeah.
Oh my goodness. And we are all chickens. That was a perfect picture.
Okay, we are all set and ready, so I will call to order the Board of Education meeting for Monday, June 10th. Pledge of Allegiance is first on our tasks. Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Action on the agenda as it is presented. Dr. Schreiber, are there any changes?
There are no changes.
Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to approve it as you see it.
Make a motion to approve the agenda as it's presented.
Second.
Motion from Karen, seconded from Tom to approve the agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda is approved. Minutes, and you will notice that you have two sets of minutes, our regular May meeting of the 13th and then the special meeting we had on the 28th.
I make a motion to approve the minutes for the May 13th and May 28th meetings as presented.
I'd like to make a, oh, sorry.
Okay, go ahead, Ryan, for correction.
Yeah, on the 5:13 minutes, the one, could it be possible that we could, on item number 5, miscellaneous on staffing report, to put in, it says motion carried, but it doesn't indicate how the vote was, how votes were cast. Could we have that updated?
There's only, the only votes that are counted like that is a roll call vote. If it is a carried vote, the only thing you mark is carried and then abstentions.
But we do have the opportunity to, I mean, that's not set in stone, that's just the least amount that you have to put on. Because I think it would be good for the public to know how their school board members and their representatives have voted on something like that.
I certainly think we could do that. I think then what I would ask is they do a roll call vote, so that way we know. And then it'll truly reflect accurately in the vote then.
Very well. Yeah, that's
That's what I would suggest. Yeah. If I do a voice vote and you're not okay with that, just request a roll call or hand count or something, and then we can notify it or notate it. So we'll do that moving forward. Any other questions on the minutes? Diamond has a motion on the floor. I need a second.
Second.
And that would be from Tom. To approve the minutes as presented. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are approved. And let me get back here. We have vouchers next.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to approve vouchers totaling $1,150,463.48 as presented.
Second.
Motion from Mike and second from Tom, who seems to want to second every motion tonight, but that's okay. To approve the vouchers as presented. All in favor say, I'm sorry.
Before we
I need to ask for input, my bad.
Yeah, I just have some questions, and just because I'm not really sure what some of these are, and I just want to make sure I know what they are, so I know what I'm voting for. So one question I have is on page 7 of the vouchers. There's a line item that says excess copies from Rhyme Business Products. I'm not. That one kind of threw me off because I'm not really sure what's meant by excess copies.
I'm looking at page 7. I'm trying to find it.
It's the 7th item down.
Got it. Does any of our admin folks have insight there?
$4,500, right?
Correct.
No, wait, I don't. I'd have to research that and get back to you on that. I don't know, when the vouchers were being looked at, Mike, did you see that or notice any, did you have any
I didn't, but you know, it's just like anytime with the vouchers, I like to just kind of focus on one thing at a time, but
Sure.
try to do everyone, I'd be there all week.
Sure, no, I understand.
You know.
But that's something we can definitely research and get back to you, absolutely.
The next one is the one actually right underneath that. It's Rick Wilcox Theater
Yep.
for $5,000.
Yep.
And it says end of year program. Can you give me a little information about that? 'Cause I'm not.
Yep, Rick Wilcox, the magician from Wisconsin Dells, came down to be a part of our end of the year celebration event this year
For the students or
for the staff.
for staff?
The entire staff, the entire district staff was there, and he did his show down here. It was a way to kind of celebrate the year, and so yeah, so that he came down and did his magic show on stage at the high school for the entire district staff.
So just so I'm understanding this correctly, we spent $5,000 on a magician.
We spent $5,000 on the celebration. Yes.
Not a celebration, on a magician. How much did you spend on the entire celebration?
There's nominals built in. We didn't do any food or anything like that. We already had the medals and the awards from the previous years that we accumulate. So, yeah. And so I think that and there were board members obviously that attended, and so I believe that the celebration went over really well, and so yes, to answer your question, yes.
$5,000 for a magician. Okay. I think there's a couple more in here.
And just to piggyback on that one, Brian, for the last, this is the third year we've done this? Third year in the spring, where it's kind of an appreciation for staff. And we have brought in, last year we had Lindsey Vaughn, and before that we had an Olympic hockey player. So we have brought in people to celebrate the staff of the year that they've put in for us for 2 or 3 years now.
So
it's nothing new.
Yeah. So Lindsey Vaughn, was her price $5,000?
I have no idea.
Yeah, I mean, I understand. You know, I support the teachers a lot, and I think they deserve all the recognition in the world they can get. But I don't know, just my opinion. $5,000 for a magician. I think there's better ways that you can show appreciation and recognition to the staff. But that's just my opinion.
Well, and I think that one of those situations, Brian, where when we talk about the end of year celebration, offering input is obviously always available. And the other thing is, what's the ROI on positive culture? And so I think there's definitely some things that, while the quantitative seems to be on the docket quite a bit, the qualitative is also just as important. And so, as a choice that I made, I definitely own that decision. But
I don't disagree, but I would say that if you gave $5,000 and you split it up and gave it to each individual, a teacher, or even maybe a little bit more, they'd probably appreciate that and feel recognized a lot more than a magician. But
Brian, I don't think that's a fair statement to put in the mouths of our staff.
I'm just talking about based on research and stuff like that. But let me continue on. So then there's another one for the Kalahari admission for 4653. Was that the Skyward conference that was for? I just want to double check on that one. That's on page 2, about probably 2/3 of the way down.
Sixth grade field trip to the Kalahari for
Okay.
our students. The
Okay.
end of year celebration. The kids had a fantastic time.
Perfect. I was wondering if it was the field trip or right underneath there it says the Skyward Conference. So perfect. That's all I wanted. Thank you very much. That's all I have. Okay.
And I can maybe talk to the Rhyme thing. We get excess copies at work, so it might be different for the district, and we don't use Rhyme, we use a different service. But we're allotted, we pay for, in our leasing agreement, to have so many copies made. And if you go over that on your machines, you then have to pay an additional fee for each paper that you print that's not within your lease. That's how it works for our business with a different provider, so that may be it without anyone being here to speak to it without seeing the contract, so that might be able to
Okay.
justify that.
No, that makes sense. Thank you, Devin.
Okay, any other discussion on vouchers? I have a motion on the floor to accept them as presented. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed?
Motion carries.
Would you like that in a roll call vote?
That's fine. Okay. Public participation, and I neglected to grab the sheet back there for sign up. Would someone help me just a moment?
Shelley is number one.
Shelley, we're gonna invite you first. Okay. Oh, okay. My apologies, go ahead.
I'm Shelley Krupnicki. I live in 2713 12 Oaks Drive, Milton, Wisconsin. I'm more talking, I guess, on C than B. I just want to say thank you to Tim Shiger. I have not been able to attend the other board meetings. And I want to thank him for his service with the beginning of a new search for a superintendent. Some people are under the impression that great superintendents are a dime a dozen, and they are not in any shape, form, or way. I've worked with several superintendents and I've attended many conferences with different superintendents and school board members who work for, work with different superintendents and teachers and unions that work with different superintendents. Milton has had the benefit of experiencing a great superintendent in Dr. Tim Shiger. He's here for the kids, the staff, and his goal is to service our community. If you are in doubt of that, you can just look at any of the number of things you've seen him at. I remember my very first experience of seeing him was in the dunk tank at the chicken cookout, and I'm thinking there is no way on this God's green earth that our superintendent would be in a dunk tank saying, I'm the one that's raising your taxes, knocking it. Okay, so that was my first experience with him. He is committed. His gig is the kids. That's how I describe it. His gig is kids. That's what he's here for. Not even as much as the administration and things like that. It's to service the kids and to make sure they experience everything they can in our school district, and the families can experience everything in our school district to the fullest. And just naming one of the things that you were discussing and arguing about, he has created a theme. Any board member who's been to the opening in service knows that there's a theme every year Tim's been involved in, whether it was the superheroes or different things like that, and that's what sets the tone for the entire district, and I think he closed the tone for the school year with that theme. Rick Wilcox has been here before, under our terms when we've been here, to open the season with its magic. I think that was the theme where that was magic. And Tim is the first one to bring somebody on stage that's gonna motivate his staff, motivate the community, make you think, make you question what your job and your role is here. I felt that way even as a board member. He made me think and process what is our role and how can we improve ourselves and what can we do better here. Your search for the new superintendent should include all of those qualities and then some. The next superintendent should be expected to invest in the Milton community as much as Tim has. I know there's one thing about living in the community, there's one thing about being the community, and Tim is the community. Even though he doesn't reside physically here, he is the community. He spends more time in this community, in the school district, than most people can imagine. And I want to thank him for that, and I hope that's what we're looking at for a new superintendent. It won't be easy to fill those shoes, and that person should realize that when they come in. The involvement, and I think you'll know what you're going to be missing when you have a new superintendent, and hopefully, we'll see some of those qualities in our new person. So I hope we take the time and really invest in looking for a person with the same qualities as Dr. Shiger has, and I want to thank him personally for my children and for myself personally as I was on the school board. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next signed up is Haley Ale, and I'm going to give her just a pause because we have a separate spot on the agenda for you right after public comment. So if you'll indulge me, we'll put you on hold just for a moment. And Chuck Jackson is the next person signed up. Chuck, before you start, you need to address an agenda item or a current topic, and the one you put down here is 1F, which is public participation. So do you have a specific agenda item you want to talk about?
Public participation, yes. That's it. That's the item.
Okay,
I'd like to talk about board policy 167.3, which is public participation in board meetings. The first sentence is the Board of Education recognizes the value of public comment. And then a little bit later it says such request shall be subject to the approval of the district administrator and the board president. I followed the policy and requested that I be placed on the agenda to talk about policy. As you were all aware, the recent investigations questioning district personnel behavior suggested there should be a review of policy. The March release of the investigation is long past, and yet there has been no action towards policy review. The lack of progress raised my interest and created a desire to have positive action moving forward. Thus, my request to be on the agenda as a policy issue, which I didn't get, so I only have 3 minutes to talk. As policy required, I wrote the district administrator, the Board of Education president, and as a courtesy, I also CC'd the policy committee members. A few days later, I got a negative response from the chair of the policy committee, denying me tonight. My questions are, who, when, how should I have been responded to? This is why the policies need to be visited. Nowhere in the policy does it state when, who, or how the petitioner will be addressed. The policy doesn't mention who would contact me regarding my request. In this instance, the chair of the committee I wanted to discuss and improve denied me. The district administrator and board president were both mute. The lack of a response or inquiry as into my intent and concerns is quite frankly inappropriate. Does not a concerned citizen deserve a conversation or at least a response from the individuals the policy says the right to? And in this instance was the president and the district administrator, not the chair of the committee. Let me take a step back. If you were to examine the policy book of the Milton School District, you see that the policies are from a third-party vendor. And the vast majority are dated June 12, 2017. In other words, it's a canned package that the district bought. I can respect this. I can understand the sense of this. The policy that you bought covers you legally. However, few, if any, of these policies are amended to show a lack of duty by the board and the administration. The lack of effort to tweak the canned product to address Milton-specific needs is discouraging. My desire was to have a conversation and even suggest an ad hoc committee to assist the district in fixing this evident needs. Policy alone offers more questions than answers. The English class says to address the 5 W's. Looking at this one policy as written, it doesn't pass this test. If the district truly wants to move forward, it needs to open, embrace, and be willing to utilize any and all community members who are willing to offer assistance. Thank you.
okay. That is the extent of the folks that have signed up for public participation, and as a bit of an overlap or segue, we have a student presentation that is a bit of a public comment, if you will, or whatever. So I would invite Haley Ale to do her presentation at the moment.
You want me to talk after her? I just asked for a couple of seconds.
Okay, bear with me. I did give us a couple of sentences here toward that gifts and donations thing. I'm sorry.
Later on, I have to leave. I have an obligation. Later in the agenda, you'll see there's donations, and there is a donation from me. Handy Art has been providing paint and fluid art materials to the district for 30 years. I'm very happy to augment the district. Every time I get a new superintendent, and I'm sure that Tim is aware and remembers this conversation, I go into the superintendent and I say, I don't want you to cut the art materials budget. So Milton has a very strong art project or program simply because I underwrite all of the paint. So that gives them the opportunity to invest in other avenues of art expression, and I'm very proud of that. And I've been working with Dualu for a number of years now. He is a great asset to the district. And I'm not like sitting here trying to toot my own horn, but I do think at some point it would be interesting if you would have Dua come and talk to you as everyone leaves tonight and you look up at the ceiling, you'll see that there's colored tiles. There's a story there. I know the story and I'm not going to tell you. But anyways, I'm honored and happy and proud. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Haley, welcome.
Good evening. My name is Haley Ill, and I am going to be a junior here at MHS in the fall. Thank you for allowing me to address the board tonight. I'm here to discuss a problem that strongly affects our school, and I'm seeking support for a solution to this problem. Mental illness and self-harm is a huge issue in our district today. It greatly affects many of my peers, and very recently has taken the life of a student in our high school, Cole Fuller. Mr. Fuller, Cole's dad, has raised lots of money in order to implement a mental health program, Hope Squad, in a few districts, including Milton. But sadly, when Mr. Fuller offered to pay for the program for the district, he was turned down because the district said they were already looking at a different program, Sources of Strength. My proposal for the board is that we implement both programs in our district. I believe that our district needs as much help and support for this issue as we can get. The Sources for Strength program focuses on many aspects of mental health, but is also adult-led versus the Hope Squad, which is peer-led. I think that this is important because many students feel more comfortable talking to students than they do adults. Also, students are around each other and see more on social media than the teachers and the administrators can. I speak from experience because I constantly see posts from students that pose as a cry for help. But I, along with some of my peers, don't know how to respond to those kind of things. That is the goal of Hope Squad, to give students the training and resources on how to respond to a peer that they see is struggling, and how to notice the signs of someone who is struggling. Also, Mr. Fuller is offering to fund the entire program, which costs approximately $7,500. So in my opinion, it wouldn't make sense to turn it down. This is free money being offered to our school, and if it helps just one student, it's well worth the time and effort to implement it. Not only will this program benefit students in the schools now, but they can take these tools to the workforce or college to continue to help others. All in all, I feel that the board should consider implementing both the Sources for Strength and the Hope Squad in our district, as I feel it will greatly help my peers. Thank you.
Thank you, Haley. Thank you for summoning the courage to come and talk to us. We really value it. Okay, we will move down our agenda. Building and department announcements. If you folks want to update us.
Just a couple updates for Northside. Last week, our sixth graders got to celebrate the end of the school year and moving out of middle school with an all-class field trip to the Kalahari. I joined them as well. 250 kids at the Kalahari, what could go wrong, right? Our kids did a tremendous job. They really did. We got a lot of positive praise from the workers there, talking about how respectful our kids were and how they represented our school community in a really positive way. In addition to that, I want to give a shout out to our positive behavior team as we celebrated our end of the year school year assembly and 25-year commemoration of Northside. We had 30 students and staff and retirees join us in the celebration. It was really a fun day. Hearing some of the stories that our student visitors 25 years later shared with us was pretty interesting. One that will definitely stay with me was the story of not having any playground equipment at Northside when it first opened, and kids chasing salamanders and bringing them to school. So that was definitely interesting, but it was a great celebration, and a shout out to all the staff that helped make it happen.
All right, at the middle school, quite a whirlwind the last week. We had field trips galore to Great America, Mount Olympus, Whitewater Movie Theater with our 7th graders. So big shout out to our staff for planning those field trips. It is quite a lot of work for them at a very busy time of the year when they are drained, so I appreciate that from our staff. Also had an 8th grade graduation ceremony. Huge shout out to our parent group for all their planning, cooperation, and collaboration in pulling that event off. It was a very highly successful event. I won't talk too much about the first day of summer school today because I bet Mrs. Stuckey probably will. But I just want to say a quick shout out, 2 things for summer school. Number 1, we have a very loyal summer school staff who comes back year after year when they are very tired from the school year, so I appreciate that. Also a lady that works behind the scenes by the name of Michelle Wilkinson. She's our summer school administrative assistant. She logs a lot of hours this time of the year getting summer school ready. Last, I just want to say a huge shout out to Superintendent Dr. Scheiger. 12 years of servant leadership, and he has always led with kindness and integrity, so I appreciate that always from Dr. Scheiger.
All right, at the high school, obviously, fast and furious, as Matt said, at the end of the year. Final exams went well. At the end of the year, the summer is going to be quite busy, but the big event, obviously, was yesterday. My thanks to all 7 board members for attending yesterday. It's always great to have a full board at the graduation ceremony. The weather cooperated. That is always the topic of the day. It seems to be, whenever it's sunny and it's outside, then everybody loves graduation. But the kids did a nice job. The speeches were great. And 273 new alumni here to Milton High School. So we're very proud of them, wish them well. One, up and coming, lots of events going on through the summer. We have the summer trips, egg program. But one kind of program note that's actually not directly related to Milton High School, but will take place here, and has a lot of ties, obviously. But that is the Art Jam that is this Saturday from 5 to 8:30 at Milton High School. That is the main fundraiser for Project Maria Dorn, who was a student here. And the Art Jam it's a fun festival. There are local artists that is for all ages. There's face painting, there's art therapy, there are music going on in the auditorium all day long, poetry readings. It's a local art festival, but there's also silent auction, which is the largest fundraiser event for Project Maria, which helps students with mental health issues, but also the biggest area is maintaining positive body image. As in, Shauna Wesley actually is one of the founders of Project Maria, and I wanted to give a shout out tonight and use this platform. I encourage people to come to the high school between 5 and 8:30. Maybe go visit the silent auction as well. Thank you.
Well, Milton West, we finished off the year with excitement as always, and thank you to our parent group who provided a wonderful end of the year carnival for our students and families to celebrate. One of my other roles in the district is to look at all the incoming kindergarten through 3rd grade students, and then I get to place them at the elementary school that has room for them. And it's a little tricky as we're looking at to next year, but currently our kindergarten through 3rd grade next year will have 33 more students than our kindergarten through 3rd grade this year. So all of those additions and subdivisions that are popping up all over have little children in them that will be coming to us. So we're very excited when the actual additions and renovations will be done to the schools, so we don't have to sit on each other's laps. It'll be great.
At the end of the year at Harmony and Consolidated, I want to give a little shout out to both the parent groups and the staff for making it a really special experience for our 3rd graders. 3rd grade is kind of one of those special times where they're a little sad about leaving their elementary schools that they love so much, but very, very excited about heading to Northside. So shout out to the Northside staff. The 3rd graders across the district get to go for a visit in May, and they get to spend a day there and go to recess and lunch. I think John mentioned it maybe at the last board meeting. And that really sets the tone, and then we do our part at the K-3 level to build their excitement. And many of those students are at Northside this summer for summer school classes. So it's just another kind of great way to build that transition to the kids so we can set them up for success as they move on. Speaking of summer school, we had a great start today. Sunshine is always a good thing on the first day of summer school. And we have really good numbers so far. We'll be able to give you an update later in the summer, but we're off to a great start. And echo the thanks that Matt shared, as well as me thanking Matt for all of his help. Matt is basically stationed at middle school and high school during the summer, and I'm at West and Northside. and we make a good team to make sure we are supporting the students. Today my job was the chauffeur. So when we had students who were dropped off at the wrong school or got off the bus at the wrong school, they got to get in my vehicle in the booster seat and get a ride by the principal. So I had one student name my minivan Grape Juice. So there you have it. So good times.
I'm not sure I can top that. In special education, I had the opportunity to participate in the Special Job Olympics in Beloit. We sent about 20 students down to Beloit to participate. There were 10 schools there. Students with intellectual disabilities are timed on different fine motor skills, and our team did an exceptional job. In student services, it's been an interesting year for our student services team, which is made up this year. We have 2 social workers, a nurse, a boatload of, not really a boatload, because they tell me we need more counselors, and then our school psychs. And at the start of the year, we dug into what are the tasks that we wanted to work on, using our the Youth Risk Behavior Survey as kind of a foundation. And what I discovered was that they needed to work more across buildings instead of just focusing on the tasks that are within their building. And through that work, with pairing with our social and emotional learning competencies, which came out last year in May, which is kind of the standards. You have math standards and reading standards and writing standards. These standards are what will drive what we do in that social and emotional world. And I want to share some with you just because I find them funny. Not like funny, but when we live in this world, to think of what we're asking our 4K kids to do. So these competencies have 4 main pillars, and each of those pillars has domains underneath them. So the pillar that I'm pulling from is the emotional development domain, and our pillar, and then the domain is the self-management. So what we ask our 4K to do is, with some adult guidance, we want them to display appropriate self-control. By the time they get to 4th and 5th grade, we want that support to be minimal guidance, and we want them to manage their emotions, the stress, the impulses, the motivation in a manner that's sensitive to themselves, but also sensitive to the kids around them. By the time they get to 9th and 10th grade, we want them to consistently use appropriate calming and coping strategies when dealing with strong emotions. So I share those with you so that you understand the foundation that we're trying to build and to strengthen as a child moves through the grade levels, and how important it is that we coordinate what we're doing. One thing we discovered 2 years ago is we were doing 2 different types of problem solving with kids. And a 4-year-old shouldn't have 2 types of problem solving, they should have 1 set. So it's really exciting to see what the Student Services is doing now and next year.
All right, before I get to the couple updates that I have for you, I was sitting over there in my chair reflecting on a conversation that administration had with the board behind those walls right there, behind that wall. And I remember that when we came out of that 2-way conversation, we were very excited to start focusing on kids, right? In celebrating what the kids in our school district are doing and how our staff and community are supporting them. And so I think it's a good reminder for all of us to remember that's why we're here. So having said that, in 4K, we ended the year with the 4K picnic, which takes place up at Schilberg Park. And if you've ever been up there, and Karen, you could speak to it, it is amazing the amount of families, grandparents, friends, aunts, uncles that come up to have hot dogs at Schilberg Park. So great job by my staff is preparing for that, and then having so many people come, so awesome job. And then tradition at Milton East is we always do an end of the year video celebrating all of the great things that have happened throughout the year. And so again this year, multiple staff members, but a special shout out to Mrs. Brissett for putting that together to celebrate all the good things that we're doing.
All right, thank you. So summer's a great time for our teachers and our administrators who do such an amazing job to sit back, take a deep breath, and help restore some balance. But it's also a time for reflection and a time where lots of PD happens, lots of curriculum planning happens, and truly is a really busy time in the world of CNI. And we are not taking a big breath, we are taking a little breath and diving right in, because this week we're going to have leadership teams from every single school come together up here at the high school for the first time, and we're going to work on the scorecards together. And that process is going to be teams from all over the district looking at our data from all kinds of sources, looking at past goals, building school goals and some action steps within there, and sharing those out together, making sure we're in alignment and all supporting the strategic plan. So it's going to be a really cool day as we talk about best practices and what we want our schools to be. Shortly thereafter that, we already have some staff that are doing training right now for Project Lead the Way. We have staff leaving in a couple weeks to get AVID trained for the secondary group. We have a group going to the ISTE, which is the International Society for Technology and Education. We have a group that has partnered with ISTE to do a pilot on procurement practices, meaning how do we match what we're going to purchase in technology with our instructional goals, and really put a lot of rhyme to it, a lot of reason to the rhyme. We also have several groups taking part in the curriculum innovation and design cycle this year. So science folks from K through 6 will be meeting over the summer because they're going to be implementing some new curriculum this coming school year. The social studies teams from the K-12 is going to start looking at the brand new social studies standards that were just developed this school year. And we have a team from health that is going to be looking at the human growth development as well as our entire health scope and sequence. So lots happening in our world, a lot of amazing things. But again, it's an exciting time for us because our teachers get to sit back, reflect, talk about what's been great, talk about what they want to improve upon, and some really great conversations get to happen over the summer. So personal note, I want to thank everybody for a really good first year. I want to thank our principals and teachers. I had 3 kids in the schools, at Harmony, at Northside, and the high school, who had an amazing first year. So we're excited to be here, and thank you for all you do.
Before Tim jumps in, I just want to piggyback off what Mrs. Kramer said. I would encourage all the board members to go to that 4K picnic at the end of the year. I had the pleasure of doing it not only as a board member, but as a mom this year. And one of the things that always strikes me, and I actually had to go last year as well, you suddenly realize kind of how old you are. My youngest graduates in the year 2032. So my oldest discovered he would be 29 years old when his youngest brother graduates from high school. But it is a great time. It is awesome. And you're right. People do come out in droves for hot dogs and Cheetos.
Okay. In addition to building and department announcements, Dr. Scheiger has a message.
Yes, thank you. And before I begin, just a caveat, the items that I present to people tonight will not be on the vouchers. I paid for them myself, so there shouldn't be any conflict. Thank you, School Board President Joe, for giving me the opportunity to speak. I want to start off by saying thank you to the school district community who welcomed me to Milton 12 years ago. During my time at 20 East Madison, I developed many friendships within the middle school, the district, and the community. I have worked with many colleagues and community members to help increase opportunities and improve experiences for the young people in Milton. I want to thank the members of the administrative team that I have worked with during my time here. I believe collectively we have made the experiences richer and more meaningful for the students. I wish to thank our talented, professional, and compassionate district-wide staff. It is through the tireless efforts of our staff that we have created a culture of positivity and productivity. I wish to thank the families who continuously support the school district as being active partners with their children's education. I want to thank the Milton Area Chamber of Commerce, the City of Milton, and other community members and organizations who I've had the privilege of working with to increase opportunities for our students. I also wish to thank the students that I've been blessed to interact with over the years. It is their energy, silliness, creativity, and passion for life that I will remember and treasure always. I have asked the school board members who hired me to be superintendent in 2013 to be present tonight. And all of them are here except for Janet. I did speak with her and she was unable to make it tonight. I want to say a special in-person thank you. That includes you, Henry, back there. All right, here it goes. In 2000, Marquette University took a chance on a young inner-city kid from Chicago named Dwayne Wade. Dwayne spent his first year on campus not playing basketball, rather working on his academics, including reading, to make his dream of playing college basketball a reality. During his time at Marquette, Dwayne developed a deeper understanding of how to use his time and talent to help others. His time on campus, like mine a decade earlier, became the foundation for a life of community service and putting others first.
I have no idea who's coming. Like, literally, no idea. Hello.
Hi, Dwayne. Hello.
Hello. How you doing, brother?
Pretty good, and yourself? It's been about 12 years since I last seen you. I come from an area where not too many people make it.
It was always my dream that I'd get the chance to go to college, but we just didn't have the money.
You mean so much to us. And my brother Joaquin loved from the beginning. He passed away in Parkland on February 14th. He was one of the 17 victims.
10 days before Christmas, our house burned down and we lost everything. It was one of the lowest points in my life.
Hey, wife.
How you doing, Mom?
You were the joy of my life. But I was dropping the ball. That day that I just couldn't do it no more was the day that I was gonna have to turn myself in. And I seen the tears fall from your eyes. Your mama went down a road, Dwayne, that I didn't ever think I'd come back. But on that road, I noticed you kept showing up. And you're gonna see about me. And Dwayne, because you believed in me, when I got out of prison, I was a different woman.
We received a phone call. Would you mind if Dwayne Wade takes you and the family on a shopping spree? It just meant the world to me that you were there for us at this time. And you became our hero.
A lot of the words that you said hit a spark and kind of changed where I was going.
Without you and your full tuition scholarship, none of this would have been possible.
You're not Wade, the basketball player, the legend. You're the human being that took the time and on his own wrote my brother's name on his shoe, and you care.
When you bought your mama that church, you don't even understand the lives that you changed. So I don't have a jersey, but I brought you this.
I don't have a jersey to trade with you, but I definitely have this. The blazer that I wore to my first job in.
My cap and gown from graduation.
This is important because Joaquin wore this in his last championship. My family wanted you to have it.
Please don't forget my brother, Joaquin. Having you as a role model has made all the difference.
One of the special roles that you gave me, purple symbolizes royalty. And you are royal in everybody's life that you touched.
You completely changed the course of my life.
I know my brother is with you always.
It wouldn't have been possible to be here if it wasn't you.
I am more proud of the man you have become than the basketball player. You are bigger than basketball.
Be the difference is Marquette's motto. And like Dwayne Wade, I have tried to live and model service to others. 6 years ago, the school board took a chance and gave me the opportunity to be superintendent. I cannot express how that decision has impacted my life in so many positive ways, professionally and personally. It has been important for me to validate your faith in your decision by working hard, being humble, doing right, not being right, and serving others to make the experience better for all of our staff, students, and in the community. I cannot express how grateful I am for the opportunity and the belief that you bestowed upon me. Your decision completely changed the course of my life. I do not have a jersey to give you today, but I do want you to know how appreciative I have been to serve the school district community in this capacity. I have a few items that I wish to give you that represent pieces of that appreciation. First of all, there's a poster signed by Rick Wilcox to remind you of the awesome and magical journey these last 6 years have been, and how you have allowed me, along with the administrative team, to provide awesome and magical experiences on a regular basis for others, beginning with the first August staff Welcome Back celebration. There are items within the orange bag, including the orange bag, that represent our Milton family coming together to develop one identity as a school community. We are now all Red Hawks, 4K through grade 12, and the orange bag represents our Milton Youth community, as well as little symbols of our logo. And finally, Dwayne Wade was gracious enough to autograph a picture that I want each of you to have as a reminder of the Marquette alum that you hired 6 years ago, and from the bottom of my heart, I will be forever grateful. To the current board, I ask that you look inward and discover the areas and topics that bring you together, not expand upon what separates you. Having different opinions and different pathways is beneficial to the organization, as long as you have the same end goal in mind that is clearly defined, the kids. Only as a cohesive team of 7 acting as one can you work to be the difference. Moving forward, please be the difference in the opportunity, achievement, and community for the 3,500 angels that you were elected to the school board to serve every day. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Schreiger, and thank you to all of our Board of Education alumni that joined us tonight. It's wonderful to see all of you.
Is it true, President Martin, there's several hundred years of experience from the board members here?
I'm not going there.
Okay.
Okay. We will jump down on our agenda next is an update, referendum update from Mr. Mike Huffman Facility Development. And as I'm sure most of you are aware, he is our owner's rep and will serve in that capacity. And I can only assume we're going to get much more familiar with you than we are now. So welcome, Mike, and share with us what you brought tonight.
I feel like there needs to be some kind of transition from that to this, and now for something completely different. Steve Clavin from my office came and spoke to the board at past meeting. He spoke a little bit about our process and how Huffman Facility Development will contribute to hopefully a very successful referendum project. I wanted to expand on that. I wanted to get very specific about a couple of the tools that we will use. And so you have hard copies. There'll be electronic copies in the future. Of two of those tools. The first is just an example of a report that we've done for a previous project. This is St. Augustine Preparatory Academy in South Milwaukee. But just wanted to give you a little bit of a sample of the types of things you can look for from us in a little bit more formal report. looking at the recent progress on the project and trying to give you some of the key highlights which you can have in advance, and when I come to give reports in the future, it might generate some questions from you. So I'll try to keep this concise, but hitting on the highlights. As we get into the construction phase, I'll try to give you a flavor of where we are with each of the schools and the construction process at each facility. So again, just wanted to give you an example of that report in the future. If you look at that and say, gosh, there are key things that we want to see in a report, this is for you, so please let me know if you'd like to see some modifications. The second thing is probably the most important tool that we use from job to job, and is our master project budget report. Now this, and I apologize, it's very small print. As we build the budget report that's specific to your project, this will become a very long document. And this is, cost control is job number one for us. And this tool is key to that. We really need to know every expense that will hit your referendum projects. We need to be aware of it, understand how that particular expense has influence on the overall budget. And so we have columns here that we follow. We'll build out the original budget based on what you've already established. We'll obviously do some mechanics like keeping track of the current month's payments and payments to date for particular line items. But in the middle of the page is a column called Final Projected Cost, and that's really the key one for us. As we look at this month to month, we look at every line item and we say, well, what do we know about that line item this month that we didn't know last month? And how can we project the cost to complete for that particular line item? So when you are faced with making decisions along the way, and there will be many, you never do so without the full knowledge of budget implications. So not only are we saying, well, here's what you spent today, but here's what we project out to the end of the job for the cost to complete on all those line items. So often I will take and condense all the data in this report into a board report that gives you the high level on specific things, construction, design, other software development costs, and not necessarily bog you down with all this detail, but I wanted to show it to you just so you know that it's a tool where we are very, very focused on being accurate and, as I said, projecting where we think we're going to be at the end of the job on those particular items. So any questions with those tools before I move on?
Mike, do you anticipate, did you say these are monthly updates as the project starts to take shape?
Yeah, I think there's been a request that we come twice a month to the board meetings, and we certainly expect to do that. I think I would propose that these reports be a once a month report, but then we fill in with that personal visit on the alternate 2 weeks. If that makes sense to you. And as we go, if you feel like you need more than that, that's fine. Just let me know. All right. So since coming onto the job, we've worked to get up to speed with the history. We have a long history here, and getting this referendum passed and getting to this point. So congratulations on that. We've gotten to know the PRA team, J.B. Cullen's group. We've got copies of the contracts, so when we evaluate payment applications, we're evaluating it against the contracts. And we've gotten familiar with the current plans. So now design meetings have been established. There have been a number of them up to this point, but now we're on a regular schedule every other Thursday with with design meetings. That's of course led by PRA. I wanted to talk a little bit about the floor plans that got established to go to referendum. So I think you heard that there's an expectation that the program gets established and the program influences a floor plan that's put together when you go to referendum. Then you get into that design process, and that becomes, once again, a fluid process. That program is set. You all have set what has to be achieved with the process. But it's a time to look with some fresh eyes, get more in depth with various design disciplines beyond just architecture, and test again what the appropriate floor plan layout is. So we're in that process. I think with the elementary schools, it's much more advanced in the middle school and the high school, and getting very close to saying, hey, this is the plan, and now we advance into enhancement of the architectural, plumbing, electrical design, etc. But as we look at the middle school and the high school, it's still going to be a little bit fluid. So as we get to June 24th, that meeting will be focused more on how some of that architecture has developed. So more to come on that. Also wanted to let you know we've set up some tours of some pools. In fact, we're going with St. Augustine Prep. They have a very nice pool there that was constructed just 2 years ago. We're looking at that, and I believe also Brookfield's pool next Monday. And then I think finally the last thing I wanted to say is that this is a unique situation for me to come into a project where leadership in the district is in transition. So I wanted to, as I reached out to Mr. Martin, I wanted to extend to all the board members, please give me a call at any time if there's things about the process that are confusing and need clarifications on. We'll certainly be looking for the leadership of the board and the interim superintendent, but I want to make sure that you feel free to pick up the phone at any time and give a call and get the project status. Scott, I think you wanted to say a few things about schedule?
Thank you. So the project itself, we're looking at, it's actually 3 different bids that we're going to be looking at. We have one bid package that will be for the 4 elementary schools. And those are going to be going out for bid this year still. So we're looking to complete those 4 elementary projects roughly by around the 1st or 2nd week of September, and then being out for bids and being under construction in October of this year. The middle school and the high school aren't going to bid until next year. The middle school will bid around the 2nd week of February, and the high school will be about a month behind, about the 2nd week of March. So we'll have a staggered bidding, which is good for all of the bidders, so they're not working on all of this at the same time, which will hopefully get you lower pricing. So we worked through this with Cullen, and I think this is the best approach in dividing it up in this manner. All of the projects will be done by September of 2021, with the elementaries being done September of 2020. Think you have something?
No, I didn't make a phone. I'm not sure if it's on.
Oh. Is it on? No? Where's the envelope? There you go. All right. So the other thing I wanted to just briefly talk about is the approval process by the board. So as we move forward through each of the different phases of work, and I know in previous board meetings we've talked about the 3 different phases of work before we go out for bids. We have the schematic design phase, which is kind of setting in stone the footprint of the building and the square footage of the building. Right now, we're at that point for the elementary schools. And you probably received that package from Tim this morning sometime, which are all of the plans of the elementary schools, along with a schematic outline of specifications as to what the systems are that are planned to go into each of those buildings. So we're asking you to review those plans, and on the 24th, we're going to come back and say, are there any questions, concerns with what we've produced? And this has been produced in association with the administration, all the principals. We've had Mike Huffman and his team there, along with the Cullen folks, and we think we've got a really good plan for the 4 elementary schools. We're going to be asking for your approval to move forward at that time into the next phase of work, which is the design development phase. This is where we get into a lot more detail. We start understanding all of the systems. We start outfitting each of the different classrooms with cabinetry, what type of ceiling and floorings are going in. So we're getting into all the nitty-gritty systems of each of the buildings. And then we're going to come back to you at the end of that design development phase, present that. Along with each phase, we'll be presenting an estimate from J.P. Cullen to show that, yes, here's the building plans, but we are also on budget. We'll ask for your approval at that design development phase, and then we will move into the construction documents phase, which is taking the design development and just getting it into shape for bidding. Dotting all the I's, crossing all the T's, making sure all the systems are fully developed, working to coordinate all of the systems so we don't have conflicts, and making sure that we have a very clear and concise and biddable set for J.P. Cullen to go out on the streets with to multiple contractors in each trade group. And again, before we go out, we'll come back to you at the end of the CD phase and ask for approval before we go out for bids. So that's the approval process. Hopefully, we'll give you plenty of time in advance of each of these meetings to review the plans. We're giving you at least 2 weeks between the time when we submit it to you and we're going to be asking for your approval. If you see anything as part of the plans that you're concerned about, you have questions on, feel free to pass that information through Tim, just to make sure that that information gets funneled to us and we're ready to respond to that at the board meeting. Any questions?
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
And thank you, Mike.
Okay, all good? Thank you.
Okay, moving on in our agenda, Human Resources Committee report. Mr. Westrick.
Hey, we met last week. There are 5 items on the agenda tonight. The first one is the Benefits Advisory Group Subcommittee. As Chris laid it out after talking with Al from Associates, we're looking at the potential of making some changes for next year. What they have decided is to put together a subcommittee. That subcommittee would consist of members from the Benefits Advisory Group, as well as members from administration and from the board. We have identified 3 dates that we feel are workable. It is suggested that we do this summer and do the work this summer, so when fall comes, it can be brought back to the Benefits Advisory Group with the informational and the educational pieces that we want to present to them. The dates that we have for the meetings this summer, and it's mostly going to be hosted by the HR committee, but I certainly open it up to anyone. One thing that is stressed that if someone wants to participate, it would probably be a good idea if they were available for all 3 meetings, so everyone gets the same information. Those dates are June 17th, which is next Monday, July 12th, and July 29th. And those meetings are from 8:30 until 10 in the morning. So if any board members are available, would like to serve on that subcommittee, that are able to attend all 3 meetings, please let me know. The next item was the update on the superintendent evaluation. We went over Dr. Shiger's evaluation last time in closed session. This evening, the HR committee met with Dr. Shiger and went over the results of that evaluation. The board evaluation, we had 4 board members fill out the evaluation. Rick, of course, did not fill one out. And so we had 4 out of the 6 fill out the evaluation. We went over that with Tim this evening, and that final copy will be put into his file. The next item is the update on the superintendent search process. And Joe, and you can help me with this. The process has already started. We have decided to go with an interim, and the interim process has started by noon to today. Interested candidates for the interim were to have their information into either myself or the HR office. We have 8 applicants. All of them have superintendent experience, some more than others, some ex-business managers, lawyers, things of that nature. So we have a good group of candidates. We are going to start the process of whittling that list of 8 down to whatever number it comes down to for interview process. We are going to meet tonight in closed session after the meeting to start that process and whittling that process down. Anything else, Joe, Dan, or Mike, about that process?
I would just add to reiterate, and if you remember our prior meeting, we're following a course based on using WASDA, the state organization for superintendents. Their executive director is a man named John Bales, who I've been in contact with numerous times, and we're relying on his insight and expertise, and has sort of identified for us these candidates. Not exclusively, there are 2 or 3 candidates that got added to the list by virtue of those folks reaching out to me personally in a couple cases, and in one other instance to someone else. But John has put together a list for us that is sort of pre-screened, if you will, based on people that have been superintendents, they've been interim superintendents, they have exceedingly good track records at the districts that they guided in different cases. So they're coming to us with the skill set that we identified as important to us, based on, like I said, experience, maybe having been an interim, so they understand that role and what that means. So it is a very highly qualified list. As you read through the resumes, it's apparent that these are highly skilled folks that will do us well. So we have great candidates, and we will find a really good person to help us.
Just to touch on the process a little more, we are going to include some administrators in this process. We are also going to include Kim Kraus in this process as well. We feel their input is very important. So hopefully this week we'll get to the point where we can start scheduling interviews. At this point, the list is not to be made public. In most cases, the finalists are announced, but up until this point, they are not going to be made public. The list of candidates, because some are still working and could possibly not have identified to their bosses that they're looking. So they will not be made public. Moving on to the next item is discussion and possible action on teacher compensation model. As you know, we came up with a compensation model matrix. We are in what, Tim, the 3rd year?
Going into the 4th year.
Going into the 4th year. And basically that eliminated the steps and lanes, where it took away you automatically move, looking at just the longevity piece of it. You had to have an successful evaluation, as well as take advantage of some professional development opportunities. So when it was rolled out, once the dust settled, when everyone was put into their place, it has worked very successful. I feel in the input from the teachers and administration that they back that up. It has come to our attention, and this was actually after negotiations for this year, that the matrix at the very end, I believe it's Schedule R. Chris, does that sound right? R. Those are for people that have been in the district a long time. They, because of the way the matrix is set up, they would not be able to benefit as much from the system as someone that was further up on the grid. It's, and maybe Kim, you can explain it.
Yeah, we have, with the successful evaluations each year, that's how you step down on the grid. We have 19 staff members that are currently at letter R, and so there's no further step. And so they will receive the 2.44 on the base. Remember, the base for the is on that 43,000 for their base, and then the supplemental dollars if you were to have a successful evaluation and then move that step. That's additional. That's part of that total package. And what the way it's working now is that those 19 people would receive the 2.44 on their base, but would not receive the successful evaluation merit pay. And so that's where this has come up in question as to the ask of having a conversation about addressing it, whether it's a flat dollar amount. I don't believe that at this point we would add necessarily different letters, but there could be some ways to address it by doing a flat dollar amount, potentially, if that's what the board wishes to do. And so that's the reason for the conversation, is to talk about those, in this case it's 19 staff members that have reached the end of the matrix on that. Is there something that the board would like to do from the supplemental or merit side of the schedule for them?
When we had the negotiations with the group, this particular topic did not come up. It kind of came up when people kind of realized that they were in that predicament. So this was not included in our negotiation package.
Well, and real quick, just so the negotiation would only be on the base, but it was not part of the conversation, is what you're saying.
Exactly. And part of that conversation was also the health benefit package. We had at one point looked at some changes. We put a survey out, and the majority of the respondents to the HR committee wanted to see it stay the same. We were very fortunate with the work of Associated that our premiums actually went down. So there was some savings to the staff because the premiums were lower, and they did not have to change any of their benefits. So it was brought up to us about the potential of doing something for those 19 people, which I think make up 7% of our staff, approximately. So it was brought to the HR committee, and we had discussions on it, and so we decided to bring it to the full board to see what they felt about it.
Tom, I got a comment.
Okay.
I'm on the HR committee, and we had negotiations, and I'm all for looking at this for another year, but when you negotiate and you agree unanimously on both sides that we had a deal, and then to open it up on one side but not open it up on the other side, I mean, we can go back and say, well, we can change insurance benefits, and I don't think the teachers appreciate if we did that. I just think we should just let a sleeping dog lie for another year, and I think we need to address it next year, and we should, but I just don't think we should at this point.
And real quick, just to I want to make sure we're clear, the base wage, which when you look at the matrix, is that top box up there, the 44,494, that's what the 2.44% is based on. When it comes to insurance benefits or adjusting the grid, that is off limits based on Act 10. So the bachelor base, I just want to make sure it's very clear for the audience and for those watching at home, we are not negotiating any of the dollar amounts as far as supplemental or merit pay or insurance benefits. It was only the 2.44. And so one can argue that you look at the total package is the total package, but by law, you can only talk about one package with the union. So make sure we're clear that we did not cross any lines having these conversations. It was strictly base wage only. The other pieces did not come into play at all in any kind of negotiation or conversation with the union.
Thank you for that clarification, because I know that is somewhat, it's very complicated to know that the 244 is on the base only, and we can't talk about that enough. Any other comments from the board? Diamond, I know you had some teachers reach out to you that fell into this category.
Yes, I had quite a few people reach out to me. I know the board was reached out to in whole as well by the union president. And being on the committee, we don't negotiate on things like this. So that was some odd statements, and I'm not really sure where that came from. But the staff feel that they come to work and work hard, and one of our main objectives, our strategic planning objectives, is to retain our great staff. And if they're getting positive evaluations and they're staying in our district for longevity, and we want to keep them here for that continuity, that they're not receiving that same recognition that the younger staff or staff that have only been here for a few years or not as long as they have are receiving. No one came to me with the demand of a dollar amount. They just wanted to be looked at. When it goes to us sitting on the committee, I feel that we did a disjustice this year by not having that conversation. I will take ownership to that too. It wasn't something that I looked at and said, wow, we have step R. Is there staff that are going to hit that? It wasn't on our radar. I think we had a lot going on when we were doing these conversations, and that does not lend excuse to us missing it. But I do think it allows us to look back and decide if we had evaluated it correctly the first time, would we have made a change? I don't think we can fault our staff for them not realizing that they weren't being impacted until they received their contracts and didn't see that they were gonna have a bump with a successful evaluation. I know as one time I was an employee, and until you're impacted with something, you're not looking ahead to what those imperfections in the system might be. No one was out of line when talking to me. It was very respectful in every manner, and I just think we owe it to our staff. It is almost 8% of our staff. That's a significant amount to me. Even if it was just one staff member, I think we at least should have the conversation about what a budget impact would be with that. To me, it seems like a very small drop in our large budget to at least have the conversation of how we can continue to retain these great staff members who are kind of hurt by the inability for us to do something for them within a positive evaluation.
Any other board members?
I guess I'd just like to say that I do support our teachers 100%, and they deserve everything that they're getting and more. And I wish this would have came before the agreement. I guess I'm at the thought process that yeah, we probably need to address this, but unfortunately, because agreements have gone forward, I think the right time would be to address it next year when we have a fresh start of the negotiations and contract, and then we can address it in a proper manner. So I'm in favor of definitely providing the 19 staff members with more, I guess, an increase in their wage based on a successful evaluation, but I think the appropriate time to do that is next year since we already have the agreement in place.
Can we just make sure we stop saying that we negotiate it, because it's not negotiations.
That's
We
fine.
don't negotiate on the matrix, so we have to stop saying that, because
That's fine, but-
against Act 10.
Yeah, okay, so that's fine. My feelings are pretty much the same.
Not just for you, Brian,
Right,
just
right.
for everyone. We
Right.
don't negotiate this. This isn't a negotiation with staff.
I guess I'm the last board member to speak. I was at the HR committee when this was discussed. And I'll just reiterate my statement from that committee is that I do agree we should not leave these 19 plus, I'm assuming probably next year and the years to come, staff in the dark or left behind. They do need to be compensated at some point in time. Again, I don't believe that this year is appropriate since contracts have been issued and the wages have been settled, but it definitely, you know, with a huge, I'm sorry, we're taking a look at this, and hopefully next year we can do something moving forward.
I have not elaborated what I think, and I basically think that since we've had this process in place for 3 years, I somewhat disagree with you, Diamond, about us missing it. I mean, it's been there. It just so happens that this year there are a lot of people that fell into that category. I do think that those people, it was their responsibility to bring that to us prior to the contracts being settled. It's not that I don't support the teachers. I support them wholeheartedly. I'm a very, very strong advocate of hiring and retraining the best, but I think this particular time, it's not the time to do it now since the contract's already out. Certainly we should look at it next year, absolutely, to see what we can do to compensate that, whether it's add an additional step or whatever. I mean, how far out do you put it? But I feel that next year would be the time to address it, and we have plenty of time to get input from them to see what they would like to see us do as far as addressing this problem. And on the agenda this evening, it does say discussion and possible action. Does any board member need additional time? We can put this off until next time. If we do that, that's going to put a real crunch because those 17 contracts would all have to be changed. 19 would all have to be changed. So I think if at all possible, we should vote on this tonight. So I guess the potential motion would be to look at the teacher compensation model and try to make adjustments for the 19 individuals that are affected by Step R. And the motion would be, are you willing to go back and make some changes?
How about something like this? A motion to approve a supplemental increase for the 19 staff members currently on Schedule R in the teacher matrix.
That sounds great. Does everyone understand the motion? Can you read it, Kim, please?
Sure. Motion to increase the supplemental income for the 19 staff members that are currently on Step R in the teacher matrix. I would suggest that if you added a dollar amount to that, or that could be the second motion, I guess you want maybe decide if you want to do something, and then the second one could be, if it passes, then figure out what the dollar amount is, and I can tell you what that would be. Meaning I can tell you what that total would be if you give me a dollar amount.
Is anyone willing to make that motion?
Yeah, 1,000.
where I was going.
I'll make the motion to make a temporary.
No, to increase
Increase.
the supplemental
The supplemental income
for the 19 staff members
for the
currently
19 staff members currently
on step R in the teacher matrix.
in the teacher matrix.
I'll second it.
Okay, motion from Diamond, seconded by Rick, as you heard them just outline there. Is there any other discussion from the board? Okay, hearing none, we will roll call this one, and I will start on my left. Diamond?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Tom?
No.
Joe is no. Karen?
No.
Mike?
No.
And Brian?
No.
That motion fails. So we will leave it there, and I would assume we would like to have this brought back to us from HR. I think I would certainly be of the opinion we need to do this, and the timing is not exactly in our favor at the moment, but I think we need to honor and reward those folks, and would love to do so at the next chance we have.
Okay. Our last item was discussion on administrative assistants compensation structure. Tim, would you like to comment on that?
Yes, each year there's a category of support staff that is addressed looking at the comparative compensation. This year it's the administrative assistants, and what we're proposing is a plan similar to the teachers that we had a few years back, where there's a matrix that would provide some division by work type or category, level 1, level 2, level 3. It would give a starting pay range, as well as a grid where staff could have some predictability. In this case, the administrative assistants have predictability in wage increases over the years. And so again, built very similar to the teacher comp model. And what we're asking to do today, we're not asking for any action. It was more of, would the board support us coming up with a matrix that's more predictable and, again, obviously financially sustainable like we have with the teacher comp model, and one that is more appropriate for the job classifications for the different levels of our admin assistants. And as well as part of this would be, like we did with the teaching staff, would be to have some, when we would, the phrase parachute people down onto the grid, it would be our corrective action for having staff who have been here for many years be rewarded for those years of service. And again, this is not about, the teaching staff is under Act 10, the admin assistants are not. So this would, in essence, kind of make the admin assistants whole, the W, over the last number of years. So for example, currently we have admin assistants that were hired within the last 1, 2, 3 years that are making the same amount as, or more than some of our admin assistants who have been here for 10 or 15 or 20. And so this would be a look at a corrective action and then predictable action moving forward.
Okay.
And we have not, what you see here is the grid. We have not placed people into it yet, but that would be the next step. But we wanted to make sure that the board was good with us moving forward with this type of action when we started with the HR committee, just to see if they were good with us continuing forward. And the HR committee did say, go ahead, we feel it's good to continue this. Obviously, we haven't had the budgetary impact yet. We'll talk about that at our next meeting, but we wanted to share what we're doing with the admin assistant proposal.
Okay, are there any questions about the compensation structure for administrative assistants? Okay.
I do one. And it may just be a point of clarity for me. So if I'm looking at this in the rows A through T, so the first 4 years you will get a dollar amount raise, and year 5 you then get a percentage?
Potentially, we're again, we're still playing with that to see what we're talking through what makes sense. Obviously, the lower the pay rate is, the percentage is a much lower dollar amount. Meaning maybe 2%, it's the same percentage, but it's less of an impact. And so one of the things we've talked about is having a dollar increase, not $1, a dollar amount increase versus a percentage. Again, we're still trying to vet that out to see what makes sense, not only from a fairness standpoint, but from a financial standpoint. So it's not set in stone yet, Karen, to answer your question.
Okay. So just, I guess for clarification, and can I use the numbers that are on here? Or-
Yeah, again,
no?
they're placeholders, but yeah, absolutely,
Okay.
yeah.
So, an administrative assistant that comes in and works for an associate principal starts out at $14.35 an hour. And then 3 years later promotes to, let's see what's on here, the family enrollment. So their wage would then jump up to that starting wage, is that correct?
Right, the categories, they may be,
21?
right, so
Okay.
the job classifications, again, by having those more clearly defined, then that would allow for, the responsibilities of a level 2 or level 3, for example, are greater than that of a level 1, and so there would be the movement with that.
Okay. Does this also take into account any continuing education somebody might get?
Yeah, we've talked about what are the different ways, in essence, kind of like supplemental or merit, looking at bachelor's degrees or licenses or certifications, and that's again something we're looking at doing as well. It's not fully developed yet, but we're looking at what are those types of things so we can give some type of merit increase for professional development that would assist them in doing their job and their knowledge better. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I guess my question is, obviously it's on here for discussion. When is the timeline to bring it back for discussion and possible action on this?
We're hoping to have that at the next board meeting on the 24th.
Okay. I guess one of my question is as we get a new superintendent, I would think that they would probably want to weigh in on this as well. So I guess I'm just kind of questioning to myself, is now the right time, or do we need to allow the new superintendent to be able to weigh in on it?
Well, I think that, and then we talked a little bit about that at our HR meeting. I think where the administrative team feels is that the structure, much like the teacher matrix, should be independent of the superintendent office, not necessarily the input, but if you have a matrix in place, then it takes away some of that subjectivity, which I know that as you've spoken many times, Brian, about having more objective criteria. If we had a system that's more objective, then putting something in place, not to rush it, because obviously if it's not ready for the 24th and it happens in July, that's fine. But I think the thought was to put something in place for our admin assistants so that they have predictability, consistency, and that really is superintendent independent. But again, that's part of the conversation, and there's obviously the 7 of you would ultimately decide if you want to hold off on a system like that. So we believe as an administrative team that we can put something together for the admin assistants.
Any other questions? If not, Mr. President, that concludes my report.
Very good. Thank you much. Moving on, new business. Letter A is update on Baker Tilly audit. Mr. Pierce.
Short to the point. As most of you know, Baker Tilly is doing a audit on how we use stipends in the school district, and they're coming along good with the process. They've talked to our business office, and we should have an update pretty soon. But that's about all the information I've got. So it's short and sweet.
Work in progress. Okay. Next is an update on our 4K program and contract with Dr. Schutz and Ms. Kramer.
Just a quick update for you if you've been following the timeline with 4K. We still are community-based. However, we used to be in, I'll call them silos. Mr. Martin, and we can kind of talk the same language, but spread across our community when each of the classrooms were like at a church or daycare center, etc. Last year was the first year we brought everyone under one roof, except for we kept one section over at Milton West. After living that for a year, brought many positive things, also brought some challenges. And just to speak to a couple of those is, we had 5 classrooms over there, and then we shared the space with small wonders, kind of in the middle. And some of the challenges that we had come across after living all in one house is that close quarters, like in an elementary school, you want to work with a small group of students, we can pull them out, go to the library, need to take a little break to try to regulate ourselves so that we're ready to learn. There were no spaces for us as we had that common shared space. And so after talking with Dr. Schutz and Dr. Scheiger and Mrs. Probst, just talking about some of those challenges and what could we do to help support our 4K program better in the future, brought forward some conversations about looking at more space at Small Wonders, which in turn meant dollar signs. So I'm going to turn it over to Jerry, and if you have any questions after he talks about that, I'd be happy to answer. But just trying to set the stage on why we came to that conversation about needing more space with our 4K students, living under one roof.
Thank you, Jen. Jen did a nice job of explaining a lot of the programming needs and how essentially the need for extra space is enrollment driven. For those unaware of the enrollment in our 4K program, it is actually larger than our smallest elementary school. And with no disrespect to Consolidated Elementary School, we have more 4K students than we actually have at one of our entire elementary schools. So when Jen approached us with this particular issue, we began looking at some options. We did speak to the ownership from Small Wonders, and they do have a willingness or an interest, if the board is so interested in doing and expanding its arrangement with Small Wonders, to include a lease of the entire second floor. And so what we did is we drafted some changes in the contract that is in your board docs packet that is redlined for you. The largest expenditure piece is just over a $36,000 increase in the 4K contract, which would be for the additional classroom space and the exclusive use of the entire upper floor. And so historically speaking, 4K contracts have not come to the board for approval. That's normally pursuant to board policy with under the rights of the superintendent. That will be up to you and your new superintendent how you wish to choose to do that moving forward. However, we do want to let you know of these changes for essentially 2 primary purposes. The first one being is we would encourage the board to want to make some decisions sooner than later, because we are going to need space to host these kids as they're coming in the fall. And secondly, out of respect for the folks at Small Wonders, they would want to know for programming purposes sooner than later whether or not they're going to do childcare in that particular space or whether or not they're going to be leasing it to us. And so the proposed changes are outlined, the redlined changes have been vetted through the district's legal services at Borman and Clark, which are our contract attorneys. So Attorney Fahey put those changes together, and staff wanted the board to be aware of that. From a 2019-2020 budget development standpoint, we have had people put into the budget forecast model an additional $40,000 for 4K programming. That's on the expense side of the budget. On the revenue side of the budget, we get 0.6 out of an FTE per student for 4K, because it's not the equivalent of an FTE student. So there would be some potential revenue offset of those additional expenses. It's not a one-to-one relationship, but I'm just going to throw it out there for you folks for discussion purposes, so that if you want us to make any tweaks to this contract prior to bringing it to Mrs. Pertzborn and then ultimately your new interim superintendent, now would be the opportunity for you folks to weigh in and do so.
I have a question on the numbers. I understand we have an increase this year over last year.
Mhm.
Is it substantial or?
It's substantial enough to now adding kindergarten section for next school year. So rolling those numbers, you know, we're about the 195 living right now, or as of last Friday. And so taking that number upon, and Marcia, you can maybe speak to it better, but people who have been doing their own thing in 4K because it's not mandated is now, you know, it's the highest we've ever been, right? But we are adding a kindergarten section district-wide, and those numbers are tight. Having said that, yep. And then right now, moving into, you know, the summer months with 4K, we're in the 170, so, you know, 20-ish away. And that's a big deal because sometimes that 4-year-old might be their oldest and they don't know about the process for whatever reason, or the youngest and they're not as concerned about it. Go either way.
That's what happened.
I'll have one second.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Does that help answer that, Tom?
There's no action.
There is not. Any other questions?
I guess from a staff perspective, what we would like to know is that if you're comfortable with the terms of this arrangement, we would then take out the red lines, bring it back, have Ms. Firstborn, and then ultimately Dr. Shiger execute the agreement. Again, it doesn't historically require.
Well, no, and so it's not actionable.
Not
So,
tonight.
right, but I would say what we'll do is we will prepare for you what Jerry is saying for the next meeting. And then you have, now you understand the history of it, and so when it does come as an action item that, or potentially in a couple weeks, that, and again, this might be a one-time thing, depending on how you want to handle things during the transition. But just to understand when it comes back that that's what the purpose.
So my question, so I apologize because I don't know, but historically it has not been an action item. So does that mean it will be, or are we just letting the board know that after, you know, unfortunately departure of, you know, Dr. Schutz and Dr. Shiger, that, and we're gonna give that information, right, to who's helping us roll over, they'll be aware of what's going on. You see what I'm asking? Is this an action item, or are we just informing you that that's where we'd like to know, and if there's any discussion or questions to help you understand what our needs are in 4K, I'd like to know that we're moving forward with Plan C, framework.
So I guess my 2 cents on this is I think we need to go back and look at the policy because for some reason I thought that any contract that the district was engaged in had to be approved by the school district, which I'm hearing conflicting things. So I think we better go back and take a look at the policy and make sure we know what we're doing as far as, you know, whether this is actionable by the board or not based on contracts policies.
Typically, it hasn't been in most contracts, because we do contracts often, weekly, that the board doesn't approve them. They're supposed to vote upon the superintendent's authorities.
Yeah, I know that's how we used to do it, but we need to double check in the policy and make sure
No,
that's all I'm saying.
Right, and I would say that it's not how we used to do it, it's how we currently do it. But if you wish to change that, looking at policy, then that would be fine. But I guess the thing is, as far as that would be something you may want to be thinking about in the next 2 weeks, because we need to get this going.
Right.
So typically it's been fine. We just go ahead and we would red line it and end the red lines and go with the agreement. But if the board wants to look at it, then I would highly suggest a conversation and action if the board is going to do that in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we're following board policy. That's my biggest thing.
Well, would it be, we all heard it, there certainly is a need. So if you just bring it back and as an action item and vote on it for next time?
Yeah, my question for you folks is if there are any things in that arrangement that you would like to see tweaked or adjusted before we send it out or that you let us know, say within the week, so we can get it to Beth, and then we can turn it around back in time for you for the actual final item. So, you know, so that way, because it does kind of go in a back and forth sort of a situation. The terms that she presented about the extra space, $36,000 were terms that she presented. There were some dollar amounts that she wanted for the summertime that our attorney struck. So, you know, she hasn't seen the attorney version yet. So, because we want to make sure it was comfortable for you. So we're trying to sequence this thing in its proper way. trying to do it the right way that you want us to do it. But as Tim and Jen have said, we're gonna have some kids coming in the not too distant future, and we're gonna need to have space for them.
I guess I understand the urgency, and I definitely agree with the urgency. Personally, I think the proper sequence would be for the board approve the stipulations in the contract first, and then go to small wonders and have them agree on it.
And I guess the thing is that typically the board wouldn't, but with the current status, if the board wishes to do that, then the board needs to set up some meetings before 2 weeks to hammer out what those details are, and then vote on it on the 24th. So again, typically, per board policy and per practice, we wouldn't be having this conversation like this. It'd be an update, but because of the transition, we just want to make sure that we are not keeping the board from acting in a way that it prefers to act, as far as acting on contracts or these kinds of things. So again, this is, to bring it to the board is atypical, not typical.
So that's the tricky part. You know, this is, you know, from my perspective, so I'm just speaking, and if I'm not an attorney, you can tell me to zip it, but, you know, we think we're doing the right thing by foreshadowing to you what our plans are. So then it's not a surprise. What do you mean 40 grand for 4K? I didn't hear anything about this, or whatever, right? So trying to help you better understand, right, which then creates questions, which is a good thing, and we need to work through all those. But as Jerry stated, and Tim, we have those students' needs, right? And I'm trying to plan ahead for kids about the future, and I understand that we have to be conscious of policy and how things are done. But, you know, on the front end, we're trying to educate you as the board on what our plans are moving forward. See if you have any questions. You know, part of that involves Stephen over here and his crew, because in the past, we were having to move out of those silos, back in those silos, which takes time and energy from more staff than just, you know, the teachers and the paras. So that's part of this equation, right? And then just having those, as Mrs. Probst talked about, those social emotional needs of our kids, you know, that's real. The kids that we're getting today need those spaces to help regulate themselves, to get ready to come back to the classroom for not only their learning, but the other 16 in that classroom. Just things to, you know, keep in mind, but that's the fine line you walk, you know, the thinking we're doing the right thing, foreshadowing to you, you know. I'm just pointing it out as a frustration.
No, I completely agree with you, and quite frankly, I'll be the first one to say that I'm willing to meet in 2 days, all next week, whenever, to make sure we get this and get it approved, or get it, you know, all hammered out by the 24th, because I agree with you. I just want to make sure we do go down the right path and do the proper process, so we don't get in any trouble. But by doing the process, that doesn't mean we have to like slow walk it or anything like that. We can definitely accelerate it, and I think we should.
So my question is how are we going to find that out, right?
Right. Yep.
Who's got that answer, and then how are we going to move forward?
Right.
And
yeah.
I think it's the 7 of you, right? We got to figure that
Correct.
out.
Yep.
Jen, I just have a couple questions.
Sure.
And one is regarding 4K, but may not necessarily be regarding the space that we're occupying. This is the first year that we did afternoon bus, afternoon 4K.
True.
How much fuller were those classes than the morning?
Okay, so we were beyond capacity this year. I like to cap the classes at 16 with a teacher and a paraprofessional. I had to kind of wager the decision with Dr. Scheiger about adding another half section. And then I talked with my 4K team. We decided to just bump that number up by 1 student. So we had classes of 17 across the district. So this year in particular, I didn't have any placement issues as far as filling those slots. Because in the past, a lot of people, the hot commodity would have been the AM because of the busing and my 4-year-old naps, etc. Right? But by offering that transportation in the PM, we really opened up those doors to give an equal opportunity for all families. So busing now is taken out.
So
that is definitely something that...
So we shot ourselves in the foot doing that?
Yes and no. We were able to accommodate many more families,
Okay.
right, that had that need for the transportation and then the wraparound here, so they can get their students to that
Awesome,
spot.
that's good to hear.
So, yep.
And then the space, I think it's the second floor of Small Wonders we're talking about?
Yes. Mhm.
Is that, I know you said it will exclusively be our space.
Sure.
Is there some way we can lock that? I think I read
Yes.
in the agreement that it will be locked? Okay.
So, this school year, we used to buzz in at the bottom of the stairs, walk up the stairs, and they would, we'd be up there, right? So the Small Wonders staff were buzzing in our already students and, anyone else who was coming to visit us, right? Muffins with moms, etc. So moving forward, we're gonna pilot the first part of the year where, we will have our locked doors and a buzzing system, just like in the schools,
Okay.
where there's a camera, etc. So it will be locked as it's in that contract, exclusively for us. Small Wonders will have a key, you know, in case there's an emergency in the tour building, that kind of thing, but yes.
Okay.
Yep,
So-
there's 7 rooms up there, 7 classrooms, okay? 2
Okay.
smaller ones, 5 larger, and then that big open space in the area, which would be what I would consider a multi-space area.
Okay. So that would then allow us to leave our furniture and belongings there, excuse me, over the summer as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Speech and language, OTPT, all those services still happen over there for our 4-year-olds, and we have no space to do it in. Hopefully with this new plan, you know, of getting more space, we can accommodate that much better.
My opinion is, I think we should move forward with this. I don't know, personally, I think it should be something the board should vote on, just because we have a new incoming superintendent, so he realizes, or interim superintendent, so he or she realizes that this is what we're doing and we're on board with that, but I will leave that a decision for the rest of the board.
I don't see a need where we need to have any further discussion. I mean, the need is obviously there. If we want to bring it back to the board next time for approval, that's fine, but there's no need for any further discussion. It's, the need is there. We need to move now.
Do what's best for kids, but following the rules, I get it.
And with our contracts, they always go through our contract attorney, so we follow our policies, absolutely. We also get our legal experts to make sure that our contracts are advantageous to both sides.
How about if we do this? As long as the terms have all been worked through, negotiated, whatever, between Small Wonders and our administrative folks, vetted by our legal people, I'm perfectly comfortable with the actual terms of it. Get us a clean language or a clean printed contract, we'll approve it next meeting. I shouldn't say we'll approve, we'll bring it up, and hopefully approve it, but that way we follow all of our procedures and we're maybe superseding them if we need to, but let's get it approved and let's get it done.
I would agree with that.
I would agree with that.
I'm good.
Okay. Jumping down, stay on hand, Dr. Schutz. Discussion and possible action on addendum to 1920 Go Right Way contract for Parent Communication App.
Thank you. This is an issue that was discussed about a month ago at the Transportation Committee meeting, whereby we looked at ways that we could communicate with parents and families of the more than 2,200 students who ride our buses. We currently have 29 buses in the district that service those 2,200 students. And one of the new technologies that Go Right Way is offering and is starting to implement in some districts is what's called a Where's My Bus app. It's an app, or it's a smartphone app. And it allows, through the use of technology that Go Right Way purchases and installs and maintains and monitors, parents to download an app, and then they're able to find out exactly where their student bus is. Where that's of some value to some parents is that in situations of extreme cold weather, while normally the buses are pretty much on a tight schedule, it does allow you to let you know that, okay, hey, my kid's bus is going to be only this far away. Or in some cases, if the kid's running a little late, tell the kid, hey, you gotta kind of hurry up, the bus is coming down the road. You can know very, very live time exactly where that bus is. But not to send the student out there too early and have to wait in inclement weather. Where it's been really kind of emphasized to us is when there are traffic delays or bus delays that are both advantageous to our principals and to our teachers who are getting set up for kids who are on the bus. If there's a traffic crash or a need for a detour along the route, and that way not only administrators but staff and parents can know of that as well. There is an approximate, because it is based on $7 per day per bus, So it's an estimated about $36,512, I believe is what it is in your memo. That would be the additional annual cost. And again, this is a contract that the board does vote on annually. The base contract, the 5-year, would be an addendum to that. The reason that Go Right Way is asking that we bring it to you for consideration of possible action now is that they do need to order all the equipment and install it if it were to be ready for implementation during the 2019-2020 school year.
With respect to the weather portion of that, us country kids would say that that's cheating. It's a bit of rite of passage to wait for that bus in whatever the weatherman throws at us, but that's dating myself a little bit, so sorry about that.
Fair enough.
Jerry?
So if we bring it to you to see if it's something that you like the idea of, do you want us to continue to pursue, do you not want to pursue it?
Just maybe an insight a little bit, Jerry. How much requests have you gotten from parents for this? Are they even aware that it's available, or?
We have not forecasted out to our families yet. However, there's often calls that we regret on the back, that we get on the back end when buses are running late or we're challenged because of traffic detours and things like that. So
this may alleviate some of that.
This could alleviate some of those phone calls, yes.
As a parent of bus riders that lives in a neighborhood with individuals that are very precise on times, and messages fly on the neighborhood Facebook page about, oh, the bus is 4 minutes late, or it's 2 minutes early, or it's now on this street, has it gone by your house? I could see that being eliminated a lot and just being more beneficial for those parents.
The other value to it is when there does have to be changes in routes due to critical incidents that happen. We had a situation that consolidated when the gentleman escaped and we rerouted some buses for a while, or there was a SWAT team call out that we rerouted some buses for a while. Go Right Way's existing practices are they don't let parents know until there's going to be a 20-minute delay or more. Well, for a parent waiting for their child to come home, 20 minutes is an awful long time. So a bus 10 or 15 minutes late, particularly when you're talking about child care situations or getting home from work situations, things of that nature. It would certainly, I think, be a value added to those 2,200 sets of families whose children are on the bus.
Is there an option to, instead of, I probably know the answer, but instead of outfitting every single bus, just to outfit the elementary level buses? And the reason why I ask that is because every middle schooler and high school has a phone, so other than not being on the bus and waiting for it, that's one thing, but if you're on the bus and you're being rerouted, there's phones and all kinds of other technology, so I'm not sure if the $36,000 is worth it to outfit all the buses.
Sure, I can certainly ask them, and the only other thing that I know from fleet maintenance and fleet rotation, not every bus is used exactly for the same route every single time. So I'm happy to ask Nate Hamilton over at Go Right Way if that's a possibility, but I don't know that it is or that it would be, or I don't know that it wouldn't be.
And I would think there might be some issue with that if they have a bus that breaks down in the morning and it's an elementary bus and now they're taking a different bus that's not outfitted with
Well,
it.
double route.
They're all the same buses.
They're all the same buses.
They're the same
Right.
buses.
Yep.
Well, I think this is a great idea. I'm sure every parent will want to use this. I predict it will be very popular. Would this be able to be used like for after-school events, athletic teams? Parents wondering when their kids are going to be home.
Yes, my understanding is yes, but with the limited challenge of where there's the geofencing that is associated with where the buses are at. So once it gets into a geofence range of the district itself, then yes. Let's say like we're competing over in Monroe, the answer to that would then be no. So it wouldn't be until the bus kind of comes into the zone that is geographically covered within the geofencing that you would then have a ballpark. But I do know from still having 2 of our 3 kids that don't drive, it might save 15 or 20 minutes of waiting in the parking lot until we know that, okay, they're more realistically going to get home at a better time.
I also think that you'll get as an equity piece. I think it's a good assumption to assume that a majority of our middle school and high school students have use of cell phones, but I think it's a stretch to say all, and we shouldn't make that assumption and not make a safety tool available for all of our students if we're going to make them available for some of our students. on the assumption that they have access to something that they may not have.
Among the other things that Go Right Way pitched to us when they alerted us to this new technology was early release and late start, and how that is a value to parents and families, and how while we give that information to parents and families through things like emergency text alerts and social media, actually having them know where the bus is allows them to plan and prepare accordingly to make sure, particularly for our younger students, that there'll be an adult there when the student gets dropped off.
Jerry, I know Go Right Way services other areas in the state besides ours. Do they have these in some of their buses elsewhere?
And there's a school district, I believe it's Brookfield, but that is, we would be the second in the state. And that they're introducing it in Brookfield or Waukesha.
There's one other district that does it, but it's, I believe they're their own bus company. They actually, you know, the Elmbrook, they're talking about it with Go Right Way. And then there's one other bus company, or one other district that does it, but it's their own, they own their own buses.
So if we're the beta test, I think we should get a little bit heavier discount.
Do we have any information on how well it's working or how well it's been received?
They haven't provided that data yet. But I think that these are the kind of things, to Rick's point, to be the beta test was probably pretty good too. You need to be part of that. Yeah.
I mean, I don't disagree. I think it's an awesome idea and fully support it.
We did talk to Ed Snow. There is no technology component on our end because that $36,000 annual expense is what we pay as a district annually for them to maintain all the technology infrastructure, updates to geofencing when routes change, buses change, all those other things. They manage all of that. So it's essentially an addendum to the contract if you like this idea, this concept, that staff would be asking you to approve tonight.
And the app, I do not know if there's a charge for the app, whether it could be down the road, whether it's the Apple or the Google Store, but we don't have that information, but it would be available on either platform.
Mr. President, at this point, I would like to make a motion that we approve the addendum to the Go Right Way contract and the implementation of the Where's My Bus smartphone app in the 2019-2020 school year.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, motion from Karen, seconded by Tom, as you have heard, to approve the addendum to the Right Way contract. Any further discussion?
I would just like to say, even though I don't have any children that ride the bus, I think it's a very valuable tool. I look back when my kids were young, they rode the bus. And like it's been stated, it's important that you know your kid's going to be 15 minutes late or 15 minutes one way or the other. So for $7 a day per bus, I think the peace of mind, I think it's a very good investment.
Jerry, you said 2,200 students are impacted by the bus?
That are eligible riders, correct.
So I did like simple math really quickly, and I think it's about 9 cents a day per student for the school year. Just reference.
Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor of the motion on the floor?
Do we have a roll call?
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you.
You bet. And in light of that, I'm going to revert to my right and make you first.
I'm gonna vote no.
Brian says no. Mike?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Joe is yes. Tom?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Diamond?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-1. Okay, and stay on cue, Dr. Schutz, update on our UHP.
Yes, the UHP stands for what is defined by statute as the Unusually Hazardous Transportation Plan for the School District of Milton. It's defined within Chapter 121 of the Wisconsin State Statutes, governed by Department of Public Instruction guidelines. Specifically, State Statute 121.54, subsection 9, subsection A, actually establishes the procedure by which we develop our Unusually Hazardous Transportation Plan. Essentially what that means in a nutshell is that the way that our district operates right now is in accordance with state law, which is that children who live outside of 2 miles of the school that they are placed at are eligible bus riders. There are situations by which we can establish additional eligibility if students live in areas that are designated by the district and approved by the state superintendent as well as the local sheriff. in what is defined as the unusually hazardous transportation plan. The things that are to be considered when that plan is reviewed, and our plan was reviewed approximately 5 years ago. And those things are the age of the pupils, the lack of sidewalks in an area, the lack of crossing guards, lack of local law enforcement in the area, such things like railroad crossings, which we know exist in Milton, the width of shoulder and highway, traffic counts, temporary hazards such as construction projects, or other conditions that have been identified by the local units of government. And so as we worked with our transportation committee, folks from Go Right Way, as well as some local law enforcement professionals, we are providing to you, our Board of Education, some recommendations for adjustments to the unusually hazardous transportation plan. It may expand the amount of eligibility, that meaning that we may have to offer more, we would, if this were to be approved by the state superintendent and the sheriff, we would be then legally required to offer ridership to these students that are identified within the unusually hazardous transportation plan. So I'm going to go over some of the maps really quickly with you and just explain some of the rationale. One of the things that was a challenge to us that we couldn't quite figure out why we did it a certain way, and that was we used to have it be that there were unusually hazardous transportation areas that were designated, but then we had areas just beyond them that would require students within that 2-mile range to walk through the unusually hazardous transportation area rather than to actually get bused to school. So that these maps that are presented to you tonight fix that or correct that issue moving forward, so that that way students would no longer have to do that. So you see the area out by Janesville, North Janesville Street, and then North Milton Road. Some of these changes are a result of, and we also recognize this as we were updating it, the Highway 26 bypass that went through the city of Milton. So some of those now more heavily traveled streets, and in some cases less heavily traveled street, have caused for the expansion of that. The other things that have tied into this particular issue, as you look going down the map, in particular the second portion of the map, page 2, which is in your board docs, which is actually the expansion of the Red Hawk Farm subdivision and a substantial increase in traffic on Parkview Drive as a result of that now being a major thoroughfare by which people come into the city of Milton. There is no sidewalks yet on that particular roadway. In addition there too, we do have several elementary school age students and families moving into some of those new housing developments. When we had the transportation committee meeting back in, I believe it was early May, there was a family of students who were attending Milton East, all obviously under 3rd grade, and walking 1.7 miles to Milton East in places where there are not yet either sidewalks fully installed yet, and not yet street lights. So when they have the time changes, those were to be considered factors that law enforcement looked at us when they looked at some of these areas and said those are potentially dangerous areas for which we would like to offer, without having to pay for the BIAC program, transportation to those particular students. So the expansion in that area recognizes the substantial growth in housing that's taking place over that way, and that expands that all the way over to both West and East High Street, which is also a major thoroughfare for which there is substantial traffic counts, as evidenced by the traffic study that we did. I believe it was when we did the 2016-27, there was the 2017 referendum that we did, demonstrated that High Street has extremely high traffic volumes during times of student pickup and drop-off. The third map that we have on there also expands the area, again, in and around Parkview Drive, recognizing that in 2014, there was a traffic study that was done that demonstrated a more than 130% increase in traffic on Parkview Drive. I believe the study was actually completed in 2013 by folks over at Baxter Woodman. But because that has such a high traffic volume, that the homes and the residential units within what was formerly called the Brown subdivision used to be the only designated area. And again, people were having to walk through the unusual hazardous transportation plan in some areas to get to their choice of school. This expands that area to make sure that that wouldn't have to happen, in addition to those students whose only walkway is on a designated street with high traffic counts. So Parkview Drive or Janesville Street, which is their pathways to either Milton East Elementary School, middle school, or the high school. Moving on down to the map, if you go out into the city of Janesville, The areas in particular for Harmony, for which we often get a considerable amount of calls for this. I know both John Lyon and Sarah Stuckey from having dealt with some unique challenges on Rodimer Road, for which they don't allow parking anymore, or student pickup or drop off to take place on that road due to high traffic counts. We have it so that the zone expands so that students would not have to walk on those roadways anymore, or travel along those roadways. So the residences within those particular areas either don't have sidewalks, or their pathways to their school would require them to walk on a roadway with unusually high traffic counts. And so the expansion of those areas are presented for your consideration in those maps. And then last but certainly not least, a conversation with you, if you'd like to have it, about railroad tracks. This was an area where we felt that we would present it to the board for discussion. It's not a have-to thing. The final map outlines those residences that live along the railroad tracks, for which a student would have to cross either way to get to his or her school. Could be considered within the UHP as defined by statute, but it does not have to be. I think that's the important thing for you folks to remember about this tonight, is that these are just some suggestions and they are options. The way that this particular process works in its sequence is you folks have an opportunity to weigh in and say, yes, we like this, no, we don't like this, and we can make adjustments with Go Right Way staff. However, these recommendations are really based on what is designed to keep students as safe as possible within their planned approach to school, and so that they don't have to walk through an unusually hazardous transportation plan to get to their designated school of placement. It's a lot, but.
Jerry, have these been vetted by the Rockland Sheriff's Department? And
No, they have not.
They have not yet.
We've done with some input with folks. I did take a bus ride with Officer Schneider in the fall when we started this process, and we looked at some areas with Sean Holmes, who was our terminal manager, and Officer Schneider. We looked at some areas in particular in the Harmony subdivision. In addition to, we looked at some of these areas within the city of Milton. These maps were generated with a compilation of input from all of those stakeholders. However, what we wanted to do is get it to you folks first, because then the next sequence is the sheriff's office, then the state superintendent, and then back to you folks for final approval. So you're the first stop and the last stop.
Any other questions for Jerry? I hear crickets.
If conceptually you like this, my next step could be to the sheriff's office and then send this to them. And then they could either agree or disagree, and then it could come back either through Diane or Pertzborn or another staff member that would be presenting this to you to say the sheriff's office is ratified. You want to send it to the state superintendent, because that's the next logical thing. There's some statutorily defined timelines by which exist, and then from there it would come back to the board for final approval, which would then establish the new eligible bus riders. So our goal was to keep this moving along throughout the summer months, with the hopes of having the new eligibility established for the 2019-2020 school year.
And I'm the chair of the transportation committee, so I'll just reiterate what I said during that committee when I told Jerry, why are we not doing this? Why not? Why are we not trying to keep our kids safe? We're already busing, or already had bused kids that shouldn't be, because it was an unusually hazardous area, particularly the Red Hawk Farm area. Why are we even thinking about this? Let's just, my opinion only, but let's just move this forward to tell Jerry to contact the Sheriff's Department and get going on this.
I would agree.
I agree.
I agree.
Sorry, you want to take your finger away, Joe?
I would agree. Okay, I don't think we need action here, but I think,
just direction.
okay, I think it's a consensus, if I can summate, to take the next step, get us moving down the path.
Okay. Thanks.
Thanks, Jerry.
Alrighty, and last on new business is discussion and possible action on resolution of the School District of Milton regarding administration of district bank accounts with First Community. Ms. LaPointe.
Okay, so during this period of transition, we need to ensure that someone is maintaining our internet banking example, if there are any staffing changes in the business office, we need to change, maybe add or delete user accounts that have access in our internet banking. So we are proposing that that would be me until there is a more permanent solution in the administrative staff.
Okay, you all have the resolution in your board packet, and that outlines in detail exactly what we're asking for here. And we do need action on this, so if you've had a minute to peruse that.
I'd make a motion, we accept the resolution as presented.
I'll second.
Motion from Tom, seconded by Diamond, to approve the resolution in front of you with respect to our internet banking at First Community and the authorized folks obligated that way. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes. Thank you. Bear with me while I catch up on the agenda here. And we are up to miscellaneous. Action on staffing report. Professional and support staff hires, resignations, and retirements, of which you have in your packet the summation.
I make a motion, we accept the staffing report as presented.
I'll second.
Motion from Tom, seconded by Rick, to approve the staffing report as it's presented in your packet. Any discussion?
Just real quick, I'll be voting no again until the investigation recommendations are in place.
Brian, would you like a roll call? Or do you just want to do
Yeah, let's do a roll call for the heck of it, just because it's fun.
that? Okay, fun it is. Motion in front of you then, as it's outlined, roll call vote. I'm going back to my left. Diamond?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Joe is yes. Karen?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
And Brian?
No.
Duly noted, the motion passes 6-1. And action on gifts and donations. Let's jump to that. We have totals of $8,849.13 from 4 generous donors, with the aforementioned Mr. Jackson being the largest portion of that at Handy Art.
I so move with gratitude.
Second.
Motion from Mike, seconded by Diamond, to accept on behalf of the district with our gratitude the gifts and donations that show on your report. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Meeting dates, upcoming board and committee meetings. What have we got?
We have June 17th, we have our curriculum committee at 8:30 a.m. I believe there's also there's a committee for the benefits.
Yep.
At 10 a.m.
17, yep.
Correct, on the 17th. The next scheduled board meeting is June 24th, here at 6:30 p.m. And then there's one meeting in July 15th, for the next school board meeting after that. I'm assuming there'll be some committee meetings in between, and there might be additional meetings if the board wishes to as far as anything with the superintendent search, but those will be determined at a later time.
Okay. And one other announcement that you may have seen on the back table when you walk in, we have a flyer printed up. We are doing a community farewell for Dr. Scheiger. The date is Thursday, June 27th at Milton House, I believe second floor, or the community room, whatever they call that up there. 4:30 to 6:30, I believe, if I'm remembering my flyer correctly. So we invite anyone interested and all that can to attend. So one other thing, we will have a short pause. We're going to go to executive session or have a motion to do that, but in supersedence of that, in the interest of shameless self-promotion, it is June Dairy Month. Ice cream showed up. So you are all invited. I got a cooler over here on the side. There's ice cream cups and some spoons there, so please grab one if you're so inclined, and we'll break for just a couple seconds prior to us going into executive. So Letter 6, motion to go into executive session, section 1985, sub 1, sub C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. This is administrator compensation and interim superintendent search process, as we indicated earlier. I'll need a motion to do that.
So move.
Second. Motion from Tom, seconded from Mike. Roll call vote. Back to the right. Brian?
Yes.
Mike? Yes. Karen?
Yes.
Joe is yes. Tom?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Diamond?
Yes.
The ayes have it, 7-0. We will be in executive. Right. Shortly.
Thank you.